And good afternoon, everyone. This is the panel where we lift everyone's spirits. At least that was my experience in speaking to these three remarkable designers who think about design thinking and who deploy design thinking in ways that I think is tremendously optimistic and joyful. I think those two characteristics of optimism and joy are, in fact, among the most important and often overlooked when attempting to tackle problems of great complexity. And the reason that I see this as the panel that lifts everyone's spirits is because the issues that these three students of design and design thinking have undertaken in their own work really looks at and engages with some of the most complex challenges facing society today, but does it in a way that makes you feel like there's some hope, some possibility. And in fact, I think there's great possibility and great hope, and I am, if not an eternal optimist, certainly one that moves in that direction. And so I will do something here, which is to first let each of these students speak. I will introduce them to you, and then we will have a brief discussion among the four of us, and if any questions arise in the audience, you should shout them out. But I will, from my left, introduce to you first BOBACK FIROOZBAKHT, who has an undergraduate degree in architecture and is now currently studying the graduate program at RHODE in interior architecture and adaptive reuse. And I'm going to ask him in a moment to speak about design and adaptive reuse in today's real estate market. Next to BOBACK is MIKI, who is an environmental studies student at PARSONS. I promise I won't play favorites today, though, well, you never know. She's an environmental studies student at PARSONS, and she will speak about health services innovation. And then farthest to my left, Michael TURRI, who has an undergraduate in ecology and evolutionary biology and is now at the D School at Stanford, and will speak about sustainability at the systems level. As I said, I think each of them are really addressing deeply complex, multidimensional problems we might often call wicked, but they are approaching them from the perspective of an engagement and a kind of a radical simplicity, not simple-mindedness, but a radical simplicity. So I will first give you BOBACK to speak about adaptive reuse.
Thank you, Joel. So as Joel mentioned, this is working, right? Okay. I'm studying for my Master's of Interior Architecture, Adaptive Reuse Interventions. Basically, the study of existing buildings. It's more to train my mind as an architect, but not be an architect. I don't want to do that. I see myself doing real estate development, but a current issue in the real estate development world is that you have a lot of real estate developers that lack the common knowledge of design, and design can solve many problems. So why design now would be look behind us and look at all the existing buildings, and that 85% of these buildings by 2030 will remain. And what do we do with those buildings, and how do we engage them? As real estate developers, who are the people who are driving the project, and the people who are picking the architects, what are some solutions that we can do? In Providence, Rhode Island, where I go to school, I worked on a project with a developer, JTJ Investments there, where we took one of his buildings, and it was a warehouse he purchased. As you know, Providence is not high prices, but he purchased for around $30 a square foot for a 10,000 square foot building, and we've converted it to potential net zero affordable artist studio lofts. So your top floor is 5,000 square feet for a loft, and your bottom floor is your studio, and all keeping it affordable plus no energy load. So the way we did this was very simple. The building, first you address the building. How do you see it as an architect? How do you see it as a developer? What are the benefits of it? And so that's, I guess, you look at all these buildings and see each one of them has its unique benefit. And the benefit of this building was that it's 40-degree angle roof, which is the optimum angle for any solar panel, was facing perfect solar south. So with government incentives and things like that, we arrayed it with a solar panel, and then insulation on the outside, put a R40 insulation on the exterior of the building to not lose space on the interior, because the building was an existing warehouse, concrete up windows, and I wish I had images to show you. If you want, just go to my website. So this board and batten provided you the insulation needed, provided the space from the inside, and restored the neighborhood with this warehouse, which in the next 2 years hopefully will begin processing and construction documents, things like that. But it just shows that there's lots of opportunities out there, and how do we address them? Each building's individually specific, but how can I, as a future real estate developer with my background in design, approach existing buildings in a better, more efficient way? I keep it short because I know we're time-wise.
Okay. So I'm here to speak about a project that Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and Parsons collaborated in, and we were given a design brief to look at. They were posing the question, you know, how do patients transition from their homes, to the center, to the facility, back to their homes again? How do they transition emotionally? How do they transition physically? And so we were asked to think about warm welcomes, thoughtful send-offs, and engaged community. So my partners and I, one who's here, Athena, we thought about this and we came up with an herb garden system that patients and family members and caretakers can engage in as an activity while they're waiting, while they're at the facility, but also as a way for the nurse and the staff to kind of monitor them through the herbs they were planting. All the herbs we chose were ones that would soothe symptoms or stress caused by either the treatment that they were receiving or just, just uneasiness. So it was also a method for the staff to engage and really see in a really analog way, in a nonverbal way, how these patients were feeling and what they were going through.
Just by way of a brief introduction, Stanford's Human-Centered Design Program was started in 1958 and is an interdisciplinary partnership between the mechanical engineering and fine art departments. So what that means practically is in a class of 12, beyond having straight engineers and artists, we also have an anthropologist, a biologist, a human-computer interaction specialist. So we really get to mix it up quite a lot in our teamwork. We focus particularly on complex human needs and how our team-based methodology can help to address them. Last year, my classmate Perrin and I made an application for and were awarded a grant from the Sustainability Council to work with campus waste management on redesigning Stanford's recycling program. At the project outset, Stanford had already succeeded in reducing its 8,000-ton annual waste load to about 65%. So that's a combination of recycling and actually reducing waste from ever being created. But that rate had kind of plateaued, and they were looking for new ways to kind of accelerate it. So let's see, a couple slides. I think we may talk about why garbage is sexy a little later. So our first step in our process is ethnographic research, and we use that to understand the needs of all the relevant stakeholders and help us to define the real problems. So we do that through a combination of situational and behavioral observation. We do it through interviews and prototyping and iterating and getting user feedback. We also do it through direct engagement. And in this particular case, Perrin and I went on a waste audit where we took an entire dumpster worth of trash and sorted it manually into buckets of things that were potentially recyclable. Needless to say, that's a pretty enlightening experience. Let's see. We then prototyped, iterated, and are in the process of implementing solutions in two chief ways. The first is actually at the paradigm level, where we were able to tinker with policy. So in that, we've greatly increased the number and categories of things that the campus can actually recycle or compost. And then on the level of best practices that we were talking about before this, we've completely redesigned the communication strategy for the program. So that involves, it seems mundane, but labeling for 5,000 plus containers all around campus, new web-based tools for people to understand what is and what isn't recyclable, and even a slightly irreverent animation video to detail the new policy. That's pretty much it. I think one of the things that we really enjoy about this program is that we have a finite number to begin with, 65% of waste averted, and through this activity we can actually quantify what design and policy together might be able to impact.
You know, there are a lot of really great things about being a dean, but mostly it's that you get to spend time with students and faculty who are trying to tackle some of these very compelling questions. So I had a chance to talk to all three of these quite brilliant individuals before today's panel, and we had a long discussion about how they approach design such that it was both dealing with the problems in front of them today and at the same time changing the way the problems are even thought about and framed, so that the things you believe are possible or likely to happen when you wake up in the morning are no longer, in fact, those things, and the world has actually shifted through your efforts. So this sort of space between the intersecting reality of what you do today and what would you do in some possible future alternative imaginary that you're part of producing was our discussion. And I found it so fascinating to hear each of them speak to each other and to their projects in that way that I wanted to maybe we'll start, Michael, we'll go back this way, about that intersection between the day-to-day reality and some future that is different, and how that you think about that in your work.
Well, I've been very inspired by Buckminster Fuller, and in particular a letter that he wrote to a 10-year-old boy who asked him what he thought were the greatest challenges facing young people. This was probably in the 1970s. And Buckminster Fuller replied that the greatest challenge facing today's youth and everyone is for us all to maintain the sense of the world that we come into this world with. And in that unique vision of the world, we also see its problems from our own individual perspective, and that it's essential that we maintain that vision so that we can solve it to the best of our abilities. So I'm not even sure if I'm answering your question, but that for me is kind of was a formative read, because it means that the reality that we see and the future that is possible are really connected. And I think that that's kind of why I got into design, because it seems to be at the nexus of people and needs and people working from all different disciplines, and it's a very exciting place.
Well, I think adding to what Michael just said, I think that what I would like to work on to move into the future is for us to be able to connect back to being human, to bring back a human element into what we do and how we design. And then also to think about language and vocabulary and how we can change the way that we talk from different levels, from business and design, and try to find, you know, a common language that we can all speak so that we can more efficiently get our ideas across and to move forward in that way. And I think that with those two things combined, we can achieve more behavior change, which I think will impact on a global level.
Well, one thing I mentioned in our conversation before we came out on the stage was that our tendency these days is to look at problems and try to make them even to a bigger problem. So when we solve them, we're like, wow, it was so complex. Solved such a big problem. But I talked to him and I said, some things can be just looked at simply. And I think the future is to actually look in the past and see that there are simple ways to solving problems. And one way, like I'm saying, this is the way I want to do it, is real estate and design, and we have other people. But it's just probably just going back and taking a step back and being like, look, it's not that big of a deal. It's, I mean, there's 950,000 buildings behind me, but you know, someone's got to deal with it, and we can approach it in a better way. So.
Do you think that design, I mean, why design now? It's in front of us, it's up here. I mean, design is really in a different place now, right, than it was? I mean, this is the sense, we believe that to be the case. But you know, your willingness to just go at it is the thing that, this is the optimism I was speaking of before for me, which is to say that you don't let the complexity get in the way. But you seem to me, at least, as I've talked to you and looked through the work, is you're not also looking at it simplistically. You're not just, you know, you recognize that the problems and the challenges that we face are shape-changing. And so you're going to change their shape and keep at them.
And through our education, I think they'll help us. And I mean, we're fortunate that we are understanding these problems now while we're being educated, so we can try to form ourselves during our time of education. And that's why I've always advocated with the Clinton Global Initiative I'm part of, is that education is where our children in elementary should be studying a course in sustainability. I don't know why it still hasn't happened. It's kind of slow, but things like that to where in the future we all have this common language of sustainability. So I always say, why study history and not study the future?
So what are the big, if you look over the horizon in 10 years from now, what do you want to be working on?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was really inspired by this health services innovation course. There are a lot of innovations happening in the healthcare industry. I also feel really passionate about education. And I'm taking a course right now that's really opening my eyes up to housing. And I think that that's something that I would be interested in looking into in the future, is how housing is changing, how you know, families are changing. They're not the same anymore. They're not, you know, mother, father, 2 kids, and a dog anymore. They're completely changing, and we need to create systems in order to, you know, meet those challenges and changes.
I think infrastructure level sustainability issues are really where I'm focused. I think it's challenging and interesting and multifaceted, and there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of, in my opinion, low-hanging fruit to increase efficiency overall.
And I guess I probably stated, I mean, I really can't say 10 years from now I'm going to be hopefully working here and addressing some of these problems. I mean, our view is beautiful, but it's a lot of buildings back there. So I mean, it's kind of freaked out, but I think hopefully that's where I can put what I've learned and test it. So.
Fantastic. So in the context of, I mean, you know, here we have health, education, infrastructure, sustainability, and the redesign of the city. So if we think that design schools haven't changed in terms of what people think they're going to do when they get out, I think we're in a good place in that regard. So I don't know if there are questions that we wanted to have from the audience, but I'm certainly happy to open it up. We have a couple minutes left, I think.
10 to be exact.
Yeah. How are you going to let the real world intervene in the optimism and enthusiasm that you brought to the first portion of the discussion?
We had to bring out the first part. Well, I mean, everyone faces it. I get it's practice, and you got to suffer in order to realize how to approach it. So, I mean, I couldn't answer that question, but I mean, it's coming at us, and we'll have to face it eventually.
What was the question specifically? Right.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
How do you affect the system when you know it's a systemic problem? You can't. And you can't redesign the whole system because it's not like a class.
It's not like
Right.
Not a studio, bro.
Well, I mean, I think that there are a lot of real-world projects that we work on, and you know, we don't tackle things as you know, kind of a beginning and end. It's kind of the in between. And, you know, it's hard for us to kind of look at or be able to change policy and behavior and design all in one. And so I think that our approach, or my approach, is to really focus in on one specific thing and just try to make as much of an effect on that as possible, because it's almost impossible for, for one person to make that large of a change. It's going to take steps, and it's going to take other people and other experts to really affect a bigger system.
Well, and right now is actually the best time, because like doing our thesis work, or I'm in my thesis year right now, but it's trying to show an example like the West Park project I'm working at. And you obviously have to start out small to show that this is an approach that will work. And then, everything grows from there. You know, architects become famous because they design one little thing and everyone wants it. So if you design one problem and you show it clear enough, documentation, everything's clear enough that it will work, then, that's how we can slowly change the system in the real world. But I guess now it's our benefit that we're doing this, paying people to help us do this in our educational field. So.
And I think ultimately for any solution to be sustainable environmentally, it certainly has to be sustainable economically too. And there have been a number of books that have detailed how sustainability can positively impact economy, both at a local, regional, global scale. Some of it's efficiency, some of it is innovation. But if you back out from that a little bit, if ecology taught me anything at all, it's that everything is a system. We are all connected. Business is all connected. Universities and colleges are all connected. There are plenty of places, as Donella Meadows would argue, that are entry points into a system. Even when you don't, maybe you're designing a cell phone. When we first started working on cell phones, I don't think anybody was really going to predict that there are mountains of trash overseas, and that people have to wade through to recycle gold and other valuable minerals. But the role of design, I think, and in the team context especially, is to understand how some of our decisions and actions are going to potentially impact systems at large. And Charles Eames is another hero of mine, and he talked a lot about imbuing all systems with a certain level of quality. Quality for all stakeholders, be it the people that work on manufacturing the product or work on the raw materials that go into manufacturing the product, to the end user and everyone in between. So if you take an approach of quality and authenticity, we try not to throw that word around too much, to whatever you do, there are opportunities to impact the system all over the place. You just have to look for them.
And I would add that I think that which is what I find so inspiring about all of your work, is keeping both of those in play at the same time, that they're interdependent, that each of these individuals has been able to think about a complex issue and yet address an aspect of it, knowing that that issue will then be different as a result of that intervention. And I think not fooling ourselves to think it will ever be solved, but will be constantly engaged. And I find that to be really compelling and consistent across your work. We're in the last couple of minutes, so I wanted to thank you all for your work, for sharing it with this audience, and also to thank Cooper-Hewitt and GE for the opportunity to present these wonderful students to the audience today.
Thanks.
Thank you.